In this video, I would like to talk about how ideas of social order, class, hierarchy, and obedience are embedded in King Lear. As with any theme dealt by Shakespeare's plays, Shakespeare's attitude towards these ideas is very ambivalent. When considering ambivalence in Shakespeare's plays, it is important to consider the audience, especially the groundlings of the play. There are two opposing views about the role of the groundlings in Shakespeare's audience. Annabel Patterson argues that Shakespeare had the common audience in mind when writing his work, and that he engaged with their voices throughout his career. Refuting the idea of Shakespeare as a feudal propagandist who despised the groundlings and wrote for the nobility, Patterson stresses that Shakespeare was a popular playwright, whose works were received by the populace. According to Patterson, at least 95% of the population, the commons, were excluded by law and practice from any voice in the major affairs of the state. Given what we know of Shakespeare's status as the most popular playwright at a time when the theatre was popular as never before or since, at its peak the London theatre attendance ranged between 8,000 and 10,000 per day, it seemed fully to assume that his plays, by assuming an elitist social perspective, knowingly insulted a large proportion of their audience. On the other hand, Richard Wilson argues that the idealization of the globe as the cradle of Anglo-Saxon democracy, where people of all classes mix together, is a myth to support the status of Shakespeare as the national poet who appealed to all classes and wrote for democracy, and not for an age, but for all time. Wilson claims that this concept of the globe's heterogeneity is fixed and taught in schools, but is far from the reality of the globe. Instead, he states that the middle-class character of the globe's audience should not be forgotten. Wilson states, on the only occasion when a poll was taken of Shakespeare's audience, when the police raided the globe in 1602, the theatre was full of lawyers and their clerks, country gentlemen that had lawsuits, knights, the queen's men, and even earls. The theatre, incidentally, was closed on the only day, Sunday, when working men regularly were free from work. Now I will elaborate on how King Lear depicts social hierarchy, especially in relation to obedience and solidarity. Obedience is at the crux of King Lear. If it is not preserved, chaos lets loose. The tragedy of the play is instigated by the disobedience of the bad children, Goneril, Regan, and Edmund, who rebel against their fathers. The good people that the audience should support are those who keep their obedience to their superiors no matter what, most notably Kent, Cordelia, Lear's fool, and Gloucester's faithful tenant, who risks even his own life to help Gloucester when he is blinded. However, some scenes in the play suggest that being obedient to one's superior is not always the right thing to do. When Cornwall blinds Gloucester, despite being Cornwall's servant and a peasant, as Regan exclaims, Cornwall's servant defies Cornwall and wounds him. Although the first servant dies almost instantly at the hands of Regan, he demonstrates that not only noblemen but also servants can be agents of justice. The second and third servants also decide to help Gloucester instead of assisting Cornwall, their master, by getting Tom the Bedlam beggar to lead Gloucester and getting white subex for Gloucester's face. Instead of blindly following orders, the servants have the agency to decide whom to support and what to do, and they provide the hospitality that their master failed to provide to Gloucester. Moreover, Edgar's defeating of Oswald is interesting, as while Edgar is a nobleman in reality, he is dressed as a peasant and looks like a person of lower class compared to Oswald. Therefore, Oswald approaches him as a superior, calling Edgar a bold pheasant. And Edgar continues to act as a peasant, even imitating peasant dialogue. In this scene, at least on the surface, Oswald is defeated by a just peasant. Moreover, Oswald's complete servitude to Goneril is deemed as an act of evil in the play, as it aids Goneril's cruelty. Hence, in King Lear, justice is a higher principle than obedience. In addition, King Lear shows moments of potential solidarity and mutual understanding between the high and low classes. As Lear and Gloucester are thrown into desperate situations, they begin to consider the strife of the underprivileged and feel a sense of responsibility towards them. Lear realizes that without his crown and scepter, he is just a naked man who has to bear the storm. His realization makes him sympathize with the poor and even argue that those with superfluous goods should share with the riches. The argument that those with superfluous goods should share with those in need is repeated by Gloucester after he is blinded. These are not simply vacant words, as Lear and Gloucester take the lead in sharing what they have. Lear shares his space with the fool, Caius, and Tom the Bedlam beggar in the storm, and Gloucester offers Tom the Bedlam beggar his purse. However, it is unclear whether Lear and Gloucester's words are meant to be taken as serious pleas by the audience. Lear slowly loses his sanity in the storm, and Gloucester is suicidal when he is offered assistance by Tom the beggar. This is the end of my video. Thank you for your attention.